Let's see how you make the decision in 1951 or 52 to run for elected office to the Florida legislature. How was that decision made? Talk about that. That would be interesting.
Okay, well, a fellow by the name of Cody Fowler, he was a Tampa fellow, and I had known him all my life. He was head of the American Bar Association.
Okay.
Was recruiting young candidates to run for public office, and a fellow by the name of John Germany, like the country,
yeah,
was working for him and was one of my best friends.
Okay.
And he recruited me, and that's how I got started.
Okay. All right.
Kept it up for 44 years.
Yes, I guess. And let's see, how much money did it take to run that first campaign?
Well, I had.
And where'd you get your funds from?
Oh, private, personal solicitations. Mr. Fowler helped me organize a finance committee, and we sort of turned it over to the finance committee, and they raised $10,000 altogether, and I had four Democratic opponents and a Republican opponent.
Now, was there a primary to select the candidate first?
Yes.
Okay.
So you had a primary and a runoff primary.
So the three. You had
three elections.
Three elections:
Yeah.
the primary, the runoff primary, and then the election.
Yeah.
All right. How did you find yourself doing? Politics is interesting. You have to be a good speaker. You have to be.
Well, you get better
as you go along. Yes.
You go along,
yes. Yes. And you have to learn a lot about a lot of different subjects.
Correct.
Did you find that very easy to master? Bill,
I found it easy to master because I was a native of the area and I had a lot of acquaintances.
That's right. Yeah.
And I had a big family and they had a good reputation, and that helped.
He sure did. Okay.
Yeah.
And talk about the election. Who was your first Republican opponent in the general election?
Oh, a fellow by the name of Tom Brown.
Okay.
He was a fellow lawyer and a nice fellow, but he didn't have a chance.
Okay.
At that time, Florida was all Democrat.
Yes. And did you have to debate Tom Brown?
No.
No.
It was you just stayed away from him. Let him try to draw the crowd.
Yeah, that's right. No reason for you to debate him because
he didn't have a chance.
He didn't have a chance. Why elevate him up to your level?
Correct.
And you spent how many years in the Florida legislature?
10 years.
10 years.
6 in the House and 4 in the Florida Senate.
And do you find it very rewarding looking back on it?
Oh, yeah. I founded the University of South Florida.
You sure did. Yeah, you sure did. And did you actually conceive, Congressman, the idea for the university?
Yep.
That's your idea?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, if you just did that alone, it would be a significant...
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Really? It is a miracle. Yeah.
I believe in miracles.
Yeah. A lot of your friends have said you don't give up very easily. When you get an idea, you just keep pressing. Now
I think that's got more to do with success than anything else.
Yeah, perseverance.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about running for the U.S. House. When and why do you decide after 10 years in the Florida legislature to step up to the U.S. House and run for a House?
Well,
how was that decision made?
Rather informally, my wife and I talked it over. I had enjoyed politics. She tolerated it. She was involved in it with me, and it looked like a good thing to do.
Okay. Again, who was your opponent in the first House race?
I had 5.
Oh, my heavens.
And a Republican, too. I had a primary and a runoff and
the general
election.
Who was your Republican opponent in the general? Do you recall?
What was his name? I've forgotten.
He must have beat.
I'll think about it.
You must have beat him very easily.
Yeah, he got mad because I wouldn't pay attention to him.
Yes, that's right. Again, you ignored him.
Yeah, I learned.
And wisely so. If you're way ahead, why debate him?
Why? Let him get his. Like you say, well, you get the crowd.
That's right. You bring the people.
Yeah.
Do you have a campaign team? Could we find staff members who have been with you since 1952? Do you have anyone in the...
John Germany.
Okay. How long did Germany stay with you?
Oh, a couple of elections.
Okay.
And after that, for every election, you had to almost develop a new team.
Did you really?
Yeah, that was the big problem. They're all volunteers, and they got their own lives to live, and they can't follow through.
But you'd say John Germany was the one who stayed with you the longest.
Oh, he was the first. He got me into it, and he kept me going. Can you wait just a second?
Sure.
Hold on.
You tell me if I'm getting too long-winded. I'm enjoying it so much.
Well, I am too.
Tell us the story. There's a wonderful story that Tom Brokaw came down and spoke to us, and he said something very interesting. He said, we asked him, what was the reason you wrote The Greatest Generation? And he said, well, there's a number of reasons, but if you had to pin me down to one, it was meeting Congressman Gibbons at St. Mary-Église and him telling me the story of his D-Day experience.
Yep.
That's probably the starting point. Now, I met a lot of other people, but he
told me that was the reason he wrote the book. I mean, that gave him
he said that was a spark that lit the fire.
Yeah.
Right. In there, he talks about you being on the minority on the Ways and Means Committee, and you got very mad. The new Republican leadership had cut off debate. Talk about that story, because it's Tom tells it briefly, but I'd like you to tell.
Well, I had been the chairman of the committee before that time, and the Republicans took over, and I thought I had been a very fair chairman and had allowed everyone to speak and to express their opinion before we made a decision. And we'd had some real problems with a bill on dealing with Medicare.
Okay.
The Republicans were going to reform the Medicare system. What they really want to do is get rid of it. And it looked like to me they were trying to get rid of it. So I was invited to a meeting of the committee over in the Capitol, and when I got there, there was a guard outside the door. Said, well, Congressman Gibbons, the Republicans in there having a caucus, and I'll call you when they're ready to open the door. So I stood outside there and cooled my heels for about 15, 20 minutes, and finally they sent somebody to the door and said, okay, let them come in. So a few of us Democrats wandered in, and they finally moved around so we could find a place to sit. Everybody was real quiet and very kind of looking at me like, what kind of disease have you got? And so I knew that they were laying for me.
Right.
And I had written out a little motion that I wanted. It was really just a procedural motion that before we took up a bill to vote on it, we would have a day and a half to read it and to field questions about it before we started voting. Well, it was typed, and I passed it around, and some of them picked it up and read it, some of them didn't give a damn. And about the time I opened my mouth and to address the chairman, who was Bill Archer at that time, I said, Chairman, I've got a motion. And so I read the little motion, and just a couple of sentences. And then Bill Thomas, who was seated across the table from me, I said, Mr. Chairman, I move we lay Mr. Gibbons' motion on the table. Well, what that does, it cuts off all debate.
Right.
Under the rules.
That's right, just stops it cold.
Didn't even want to discuss it. And I tried to explain to him what I was doing and why I was doing it. I said, just fairness, let us read the legislation. It's about 700 pages long. I'd spent all weekend reading a previous copy, but they came in with a brand new copy on Monday and demanded that we vote on it, and that's when all this explosion occurred.
Yes.
And so when they cut me off, I just wadded my motion up, slammed it down on the table, and walked out.
Yeah.
And they followed me out in the hall. There were a lot of television cameras out there, and I got to tell them what was going on inside there. The cameras were grinding, and I had the microphone, and suddenly I heard this push up behind me, and there was Bill Thomas. I turned around to see who it was, and he grabbed the microphone out of my hand and started screaming in it. And about that time, it erupted into a brawl in the hall.
Yes. Yeah, it really was a brawl in the hall.
Yeah.
And did you say you're a bunch of dictators? That's all. Yeah.
I know. They'd cut me off. I would had to say something.
You bet.
I couldn't say anything, but I didn't flatter him.
No, and I think you said I had to fight you guys 50 years ago.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
You know, it's all recorded.
Yes.
Somewhere. I don't know. They'd ran it on the news for about a week.
They really did. I must have seen it 30 times.
Yeah. Well, it stopped that bill anyway.
It did?
Yeah, it stopped it.
What kind of feedback did you get from your constituents after you did this?
Oh, they thought it was great.
Yes.
They thought it was great.
Yes.
I thought I was kind of worried, you know, after that, and when I came home, I had a chance to come home and started, you know, I used to do the grocery shopping and things like that, and I went to the grocery store, and boy, they just were all over me. Oh, you really told them, Gibbons.
Yes.
You keep fighting, you know, they love a fighter.
I'll tell you how important it was. You know the great ambassador to India and economist John Kenneth Galbraith.
Yeah.
Well, he and I were friends. He's since passed away, but
Yeah.
on that day, he called and he said, if I could kiss Congressman Gibbons on the mouth for what he did, I would do it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He said that is one of the greatest displays of political outrage that I've ever seen, and from a guy who really has the right to do it, because he's one of the guys who in 1944 put his life on the line so that this kind of crap wouldn't happen.
Well, you know...
That's just what he said.
I didn't know that. I knew... I was not a personal friend with John, but I knew him, and I appreciate that. That is brand new to me. Thank you for telling me that.
And he played that tape. He videotaped it, and he often would play it for his students in his classes.
Is that right?
That's how much he appreciated it. Yes.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.